Well, you bet. We're going to talk about credit today and kind of how that affects a lot of different aspects of your life, and just kind of make sure we have a good foundation regarding what credit concerns and what good credit scores are and what the credit bureaus are and all of that. To start off, the blue booklet that you guys have there, do me a favor, on page 4 of that book, the first paragraph of page 4, the third line down right in the middle, there's a website, annualcreditreport.com. First paragraph, third line down right in the middle. It's annualcreditreport.com. That's a website you can go on to get a copy of all 3 of your credit bureaus for free. We hear a lot of those kind of websites advertised, like freecreditscore.com. If you ever go to one of those, you're usually having to plug in like a credit card number or a debit card number. And whenever somebody's going to have you do that, they intend to charge you for something. They kind of get away with saying it's free because they're not charging for the credit report. They're signing you up for some other service that you have to cancel so you don't get charged. This website won't do that to you. It truly is free. And you can pull up all 3 of your credit bureaus on that site. Does anybody know what the 3 credit bureaus are if you haven't already kind of looked because it's on that page? It's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian are the 3 major credit bureaus. For major purchases, a bank will usually pull all 3 of those credit bureaus, and they're going to go off your middle score, whichever score is the middle, and that's what they're going to use as far as what they're approving you for on the financing. So, and some lenders will just use one of them. If it's a smaller thing like a credit card, they may just look at your Equifax or your TransUnion. But generally speaking, all 3 of those scores should be very similar. On the high side, do you guys know what credit scores go up to? What's the highest you can have? It's actually 850. On the low side, what do you think? Nope, supposedly it goes down to 300. Anything 740 and above is qualifying you for A-plus pricing. So whether your score is a 750 or an 815, you're getting the best rates out there. On the low side, we usually say if you're below 600, you're really starting to have some credit issues and you're not getting approved for certain loans, or if you are, you're probably running into higher interest rates. For an FHA home loan, which is the most common home loan somebody's going to take out, a first-time home buyer, I believe you've got to have a 620 score now. It used to be 580, then it was, when I was a loan officer, it was 580, now it's up to 620. So it's getting tougher and tougher. And that's most likely the home loan that each of you will take out the first time you buy a house. So the credit's very, very important, and maintaining that will allow you to do those things that you want to do. The average as far as credit scores go is about 680. So 680 to 690, somewhere in that ballpark. So what credit affects? Obviously, it's going to be approvability on loans, the interest rates that you might get on those loans, which obviously affects the payments that you're going to have to pay. It affects other things as well, though, that people don't always think about. It can affect your employment. A lot of times now when you apply for jobs and you are potentially going to be accepted, they will ask your permission to pull up your credit report and want to see what you're looking like there. Because again, that shows a level of responsibility potentially. Now, not all jobs will do that, and jobs that will, it doesn't mean you're going to be excluded if you have poor credit. But hopefully, if I know that I have bad credit and my potential employer that I'm trying to get on board with ask me if they can pull my credit, I'm going to say, yeah, that's fine. I'll give you a heads up. I ran into an issue where I was off work for about 3 months at one point, and I fell behind on a few bills. Here's the steps I'm taking to catch them up, and here's where I stand. At least being able to say that, hey, I know there's something on there that's not good. Here's my game plan, and I'm addressing it, will certainly help your case. So that's why it's important to really know your credit and to follow your credit bureaus like you can do for free there. So. It can also affect your ability to rent, obviously, as well. Again, they may pull your credit to see what's going on there. And if you've got poor credit, it could be a situation where instead of just putting maybe 1 month down for a deposit, you have to put 2 months or something like that. So it can certainly make that tougher as well. And I guess, too, I should back up and give you a little background on Clearpoint, kind of on what we do, too. In addition to doing these presentations, I meet with people who are struggling with credit card debt every day. I'll have people that come in to see me that have $3,000 in credit card debt and feel like it's the end of the world. Then I'll have, another person comes in that has $70,000 in credit card debt and doesn't feel like they need to come see me, or feels like it's really not that big a deal, and they can handle it. What we'll do is we will work with somebody's credit cards to get the interest rates lowered and put them on a payment plan that gets them paid off within like 5 years. So we're helping somebody that may be headed towards a bankruptcy situation get a game plan figured out to get those debts paid off and kind of right the ship. What we also do is we help people with loan modifications. So I'll have a lot of people that call me up during the day that are behind on their home loan and cannot catch up, and they're getting foreclosure notices from their lender and they don't know what to do. So we'll try to help them out with that situation as well, to get them approved for a loan modification or work out other options like that. And we also will have people that call us up that just want to talk about credit. You know, maybe they got denied for a loan, or maybe that wasn't even the case. They just have never looked at their credit. They can call us up and come see us, and we can take a look at their credit report and explain what's on there and just ways to better the score. And that stuff's all free. So keep that in mind. And hopefully you don't need a majority of those services, but if you did ever want to just look at your credit, we can certainly do that with you. And like I said, that's free, and that can be done over the phone or in person or whatever you might want to do. So, any questions about that stuff so far? Nothing so far? Okay. We're going to talk about the aspects that I want to hit on are going to be a little bit about the budget. I want to talk about credit cards as well, and I want to talk about car loans and home loans, because those are the things that you're certainly going to run into out there. And I want you to kind of know places that you can trust and what you can kind of expect. As far as credit cards, it's important that you actually look at your statements every single month. I know right now it's easy because, and I do the same thing where I'll pay my bills online, so I don't really even need to look at the statement when it comes. I just know, okay, it's time to pay this, and so I pay it. But it's important to read the statements, because your credit cards can raise the interest rate on you at any time, and they don't really even need to have a reason at all. If that's going to happen, a credit card company is supposed to give you notice now that that's going to occur. And if you're watching your statements, you can call them up and say, hey, I see that you intend to raise my interest rate. I don't want that to happen. What can I do? And they'll say, okay, well, here's what we can do for you. We'll close the account and we'll lock the rate where it's at for the next 5 years while you try to pay it off. Whereas before, I could have had $5,000 or $6,000 on a Discover card, and all of a sudden they just raised the interest rate up, and I was stuck with that 20% where I had 6% before potentially, and it really puts me in a bind. So again, if you try to do that after the fact, after the rate's already been changed, they may not work with you on that, so you need to watch the statements and see that that's occurring. It's obviously also important to watch the statements too, to make sure nobody else has used your account on you, to see that the charges that are on there are indeed yours. So, as far as store credit cards are concerned, and this is relevant especially with the holidays coming up, be careful with the free financing that you do through different stores like the Best Buys and Value City Furniture or any of those kind of places like that. Basically what they'll do is they offer some great free financing deals where they'll say it's like 12 months, same as cash, and you don't have to pay interest for something. What I want you to realize though, and the sales reps aren't always real great at this, is the interest does actually build on that account from day one. And it's usually at 20+%. And if you don't pay off that account in full within that 12 months, that interest that built from day one will get tacked on. So it could be, day 366, you only had about $100 left on that account. You didn't get it paid off. Well, on day 366, now your balance is back up to like $1,100 because that interest had been accruing from day one and it just got drilled on the end of it. And they're probably not going to take it off for you if you call. So you need to really watch that. And like I said, the sales reps, they're probably pretty good at saying that, it's a free 12-month free financing deal and you just think you're not paying interest for 12 months. Well, it's not exactly that easy. So, be sure that you understand those financing terms when you do something like that with one of those store type of accounts. Another option to kind of get interest rates reduced as well is you can certainly balance transfer from one credit card to another, but you just don't want to get in the habit of doing that. When I do that, it's with the idea that I am going to pay off this account before this new kind of introductory rate this new creditor offered me. It's bad to open and close a lot of accounts, so you just don't want to keep juggling from one to another. But those are okay things to take advantage of, but you just want to have a game plan in place as far as how and when you're going to get it paid off with that new creditor. So keep that in mind too.
Is it bad because it affects your credit rating to have it looked up?
What hurts the credit is, first of all, it's the credit pull that you keep doing, and your opening accounts, which can be negative, and your closing accounts, which can be negative as well. And when you keep kind of going through that cycle, that's what hurts you. You know, so.
What about like hospital bills? You talk about credit cards, but I don't
Uh-huh.
have a credit card, but I have like hospital bills.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you that it's going to sound like I'm not answering your question, but bear with me for a second. As far as a utility bill, if I pay my utilities on time, is that something that actually helps my credit, like my cable bill, my electric bill, and all of that? Does that help my credit or influence my credit in any way?
No.
It doesn't, actually. If you don't pay your utility bill, like your cable or your electric, eventually it'll fall into collection status, and then it'll show up on your credit report. So it never helps you, but it can hurt you if you don't pay it. A medical bill is the same kind of thing. A medical bill is normally not going to show up on your credit report unless you don't pay it and it falls into collection status. So if you've got a medical bill that's somewhat significant at all, there's a couple things you can do. You know, first of all, hospitals, a lot of them, if not all of them, are going to have some kind of hardship program that they offer. So maybe it's a situation where I just don't have the funds, or I'm not working right now, or I'm a student, and now I've just, you know, had to get my appendix taken out for whatever reason. I've got some sort of bill. First of all, you can check with, you know, whoever handles the financing at the hospital and find out if they have any kind of hardship programs that they'll offer there. And sometimes they will, you know, or they'll have you fill out an application. Potentially you'll qualify. Sometimes they'll cut the bill in half. Sometimes they won't do anything for you. Sometimes they'll erase it completely. But you have to fill out an application and see, and it's always worth a shot. If that doesn't work, and they're asking for some kind of payments that you feel like you can't afford, just send them something each month at least. Because a lot of times, as far as a medical bill is concerned, as long as you're sending something to them, they're not going to turn it over to collections. And you keep doing that every single month. And as, like I said, as long as it doesn't end up on a credit report, it's not hurting you. So that's kind of how I would handle a medical bill. So, any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
How long would it take if possibly, like you have, like you said, a hospital bill? How long does it take for them to send up to collection?
I don't know. Usually it's going to be at least 4 or 5 months before something, without payment, before something gets sent over to collections. So, and again, that's a good reason why it's important to pull up your credit report on your own occasionally, because, you know, sometimes it's the case that you thought insurance, you know, completely covered, you know, that bill. You never got anything in the mail after the fact, but then it falls into collections on your credit report and you just didn't even know it was there. I pull credit reports all day and I'll see some that a $30 medical collection or a $19 medical collection. And it's so frustrating, because obviously if the person knew that it was there, they would have paid it. And it's silly that those kind of things end up on your credit report, because a lot of times you're not necessarily at fault when that happens. You just weren't aware. Mm-hmm.
Once it's sent over to collection, does it just like hurt you once, or does it continue to hurt?
It continues to hurt until it gets paid. Even if an account's in collections and you've established a payment plan with that collection company handling it now, it's going to show up on that credit report as just a flat out unpaid collection. So until it gets paid off completely, it's going to continue to hurt your credit, actually. And especially, you know, the majority of you are very young as far as credit's concerned. Those negative things on your credit report now have more of an effect on you than it does, for example, with me, who's 33 years old and I've been using credit for, you know, 13 years or whatever it might be. You just don't have the history established, and so when you do have any kind of negative on there, it's going to hurt you more than it would that somebody that's more established with credit. So it's important to stay on top of that stuff. So, any questions about that? Okay. The other thing I want to hit on as well is co-signing on a credit card or being a joint account holder. What you can do is, you know, maybe you just didn't have credit established, or maybe you're trying to help somebody else that didn't have credit and couldn't get approved. You can actually do like a joint credit card account or a joint loan with the whole idea that I'm not going to pay on this. This is going to totally be your thing, but I'm going to sign to help you get you approved. If that person doesn't pay on that loan, it hurts you equally bad, whether you're just a co-signer or a joint obligator on that account or not. So, you know, be careful if you ever take that step. I mean, even if it's with a parent, I'm sure you trust your parents, but if they go through a rough stretch for whatever reason, you know, a lot of times it may come down to they have to prioritize, and I've got to pay my house, I've got to pay my cars, my credit cards fall to the bottom list. Well, I co-signed on that account because they were helping me build credit. That's going to hurt my credit. So, you know, once you've, you know, kind of established yourself credit-wise, you want to try to get yourself removed from any kind of joint account obligations that you might have with parents or a friend or a grandparent or whatever the case might be there. Okay. So, The other thing I want to hit on too is car loans. And I always tell my car loan story when I'm in here too. But car loans, the first thing I want you to be aware of is, who you're dealing with as far as who you're getting the financing through. What we'll always say is, it's a great idea to go, if I'm looking to buy a car, it's a great idea for me to go to my local bank or credit union and get approved for the financing through them, and then take that with me to the car dealership. And my car loan story that I always tell, the first, I'm straight out of college, I'm going to buy a car. I don't really know any, despite the fact that I'm business management major and I'm smart college grad, I don't really know anything about loans or terms or interest rates or anything like that. I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention in school or they didn't teach it. We'll say they didn't teach it, so I feel better about myself. But so I didn't know what I was doing, but it's time for me to buy my first car, and I've got a job, so I'm all excited. All I know is I want my payment to fall in a certain area. That's all I know. So I go to the car dealership. First car I look at, it looks way too expensive, and salesman comes over before I get a chance to run away, and he's, what are you looking for today? And I tell him, and he's like, what kind of payments are you looking for? And I know the answer to that, so I tell him, and he's like, oh, I think we could get you in this car for that payment, and I'm stunned, right? So I was like, okay, that sounds great, let's go talk. Well, sure enough, he gets me approved, and the vehicle that I'm looking at, it's got 39,000 miles on it. It's a couple years old. So he gets me approved for the loan. He gets the payments into the spot that I wanted. What I'm not thinking ahead on is that the car's already got 40,000 miles on it. I've just now taken out the loan that I've financed it for 66 months. So I've just took out a 5.5-year loan on a car that's already got 40,000 miles. Now I'm not thinking ahead to the fact that eventually this car is going to have 150,000 miles on it, and I'm still going to owe $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in payments, which is going to put me in a real bad spot potentially. On top of that, he set me up with an interest rate right around 9%, which I didn't even look at the interest rate, to be honest. We sent it over to a couple banks, and here's what they're going to do for you. Okay, well, I'm approved. My payment's where I wanted it to be. I'm not thinking about anything else. So I didn't necessarily get the right deal because I wasn't informed. Well, we fast forward to 5, 6 years later, and now I'm going to buy a car for the second time. And at this point, I've been a loan officer for a couple of years, so I really understand what I'm doing as far as loans are concerned. So my wife and I'm married at this time, we go to the car dealership, a different one, and we're about to leave, and it's a Saturday, and I'm just wearing running pants and a hooded sweatshirt, and I've got my head on backwards. And my wife, she's like, well, you realize we're leaving the house, right? I said, well, yeah, just let me dress the way that I want. And basically the reason I'm dressed like this is because when I go to the car dealership, I want them to think I don't know anything more than the average ordinary person. I can't wait to test them now that I know what I'm doing. So we go to the new car dealership, and I find the car that I want. And I'm trading in my car, the other car that I got negative equity in because of the bad deal I got before. But anyway, so we find the car that I want. I get the price that I want, and now I'm going to sit down with the finance guy. My wife and I are sitting there, and he's like, all right, Jared, we're going to run your credit, and we'll send it out to 3 different banks. And I was like, okay. So he does that. Well, he comes back 10 minutes later, and he's like, the first bank said they'd do 9%, the next one would do 8.75, and the third one would do 8% even. He's like, so we're going to go with the third bank. And I was like, wow, that seems really high. What did you show my credit score to be? And it was exactly what I thought it was. And I was like, I'm pretty sure rates just are better than that right now. So, I get up for a minute. And where I work, I don't do car loans at this place. So, anyway, I go hop on the phone with the guy from my local bank, which is an hour away on the Illinois side. He's like, hey, Nick, what could you get me at a car rate today if my credit score is this? He's like, we get you in at 5%. I was like, that's what I thought. I was like, I'll call you back. So I go back to the finance guy, and I was like, well, I just called a local bank here, and they said they'd do 5% for me. And he's like, oh, hold on a second. And he's like, let me go check with another bank, and he walks away and comes back, and I'm kind of laughing to myself because I realize what he's trying to do. Comes back, and he said that third bank's now going to do 4.875% for you. So it's like, okay, by some miracle, all of a sudden my rate's twice as good. What happened? And so anyway, I let it slide. The first thing slides. So, okay, we're getting in at 4.875%. So now we're sitting with a different guy, and this is a guy that's apparently in charge of all the add-ons. And so, we're sitting at the desk here, and he's across the table there, and he's like, okay, do you want the extended warranty, gap insurance? And I'm saying no to everything, not that all that's bad. And he's like, okay, Mr. Cruthis, your payment comes out to this. Well, I've got my calculator out, and it's sitting here in my lap, and he can't see that I have it, let alone he would assume I don't know how to use it if I did have one. By the way I look, I'm sure. And so, I was like, that just doesn't sound right. And I was like, well, I've got this number. I hold up my calculator, and he's shocked that I've got a calculator. And he's like, oh, well, hold on a second. And he goes back through there. He's like, oh, I've still got the extended warranty on there. I apologize. I thought I took that off. I was like, okay. I was like, well, I let you guys slide on the interest rate deal. This is the second thing you've tried to pull over on me. I was like, we're going to leave. And, so we leave the dealership. We get outside, and my wife, she's, cute, shy little girl. And she's like, well, why were you so mad? I'm sure they would have taken that off there. And I was like, well, I've been waiting 5 years to storm out of a car dealership. So that was the whole reason. So, and the moral of that story is, my wife's probably 5-10 times smarter than me. She's got a doctorate from WashU. She's a physical therapist. But she never would have caught that wasn't the interest rate that we should have got. She wouldn't have caught that this guy was trying to stick something on there that I didn't ask for. And it's not because she's not smart. It's just not what she does. She doesn't sit there and do math all day like I do. So, really it's a good idea, like I started with, get approved for your financing at a place that you trust, like your local bank or credit union, somebody that wants your business beyond that one transaction. And take that with you to the dealership and say, hey, here's the deal. Once you find a car that you want, here's the deal that I've got at my local bank. If you can do better, we'll talk, but otherwise I'm just going to go ahead and do the financing through them. And that's a great way to do it. Those dealers, they earn money in different spots, and apparently it's the case that they earn extra money when they sign somebody up for a higher interest rate than they potentially could have qualified for, because the bank does make more money if I pay a higher interest rate. It's more money in their pocket. So keep that stuff in mind. Any questions about the car loans there? Yeah.
Okay, you would say you would give it to your local bank?
Yeah, what I would do is, I probably have checking and savings at some localized bank, hopefully. And if that's the case, I'm going to talk to the loan officer there before I ever go to the car dealership and let them know what I'm thinking I want to do. I want to buy a car. I'd like to have a payment in the ballpark of $350 a month. What kind of rate would I be getting in at? And what kind of car could I buy, through you guys? And just get an idea with that. And they'll run your credit and all of that. Say, okay, that looks great. And I'm going to take this with me to the car dealership, and we'll see what happens. So, yep. And like I said, if you can't get the deal that you want through the car dealership, you can call back your local. You can still buy the car there. You just need to call back your local bank, and they'll handle the financing outside the dealership. And your person selling the car and your bank will work together, and they'll make that easy for you. So, okay. Anything else on the car loans, guys? Okay. Yeah.
So because you had good credit score, that's why you were able to get a lower interest rate?
No. Well, yeah, the reason I was able to get a good low rate is because my credit was good. But the dealership, whoever the sales guy was at the dealership, potentially he gets extra money by sending over a loan to a bank at a higher interest rate than what maybe I could have qualified for. Because that loan officer of the bank maybe gets a commission on that as well, signing that deal. So they kind of work together, and maybe the guy at the dealership gets an extra kickback on that. I don't know. So, but that was my theory on it, at least. So, okay, the other part I want to talk about too is home loans. And there's so much that's kind of gone on with home loans in the last several years. We'll kind of talk first about the mortgage kind of crisis and what's going on with that, to give you kind of a snapshot of that. I used to be a loan officer, and so I used to do home loans, and basically how it worked was, with the company I would work for, and most companies are like this, I would write your home loan. You'd come into me saying, I want to get a home, or I want to refinance my house, and so I would sit there and do the legwork, do the paperwork, and get you approved through underwriting. Well, we'd get you approved, but you would never actually make a payment to the place you got the loan through. I'm instantly going to sell that loan off to Bank of America, Chase, or Wells Fargo, or somebody like that, and that's who's going to handle your loan, and that's who you're going to make payments through. You signed up with me, but you're not going to be dealing with me beyond me approving your loan, essentially. Well, the issue with that is that I want to sign you that loan because I get paid a commission when I sign you up for that loan, and the company I work for gets paid when I sign you up for that loan. Whether you can truly ever afford to make a payment on that loan, I don't care. It's not my loan. We instantly sold that loan off to Bank of America. They paid us money for that loan, essentially for us to write that loan. And so now it's in their hands. So whether or not I gave you a loan you could truly get approved for, it doesn't matter to me. So I'm not at all looking out for your best interest. So keep that in mind. Now, we do have guidelines we've got to follow. We just can't give loans out to anybody. But we're going to stretch wherever we can to get you approved, because that's how I get paid. And so don't expect the person that you're working through and getting that home loan to be looking out for you necessarily on helping you get the deal that's right for you. He's just trying to get you proof of the loan that you're asking for. So, and that was our job essentially. So what kind of goes into that home loan process as well? And well, let's kind of back up. You want to treat that the same way you treat the car loan. I don't want to go do that transaction with somebody that's just doing my home loan. You're better off if you can do it through like your local bank or credit union, somebody that you've got checking and savings with and all of that, because you're working probably with a loan officer that's not a commissioned agent. Where I worked before is I would book that loan. If I got you to pay a higher interest rate, I got paid more money for that. When I sell that loan to Bank of America, they're going to give me more money because it's a higher interest rate, because they make more money when it's a higher rate. So I get extra money right then when I sell that loan. They're going to give me, potentially a couple $1,000s depending on how much extra that rate is. On top of that is I get paid extra based on the fees that I charge you as well. If I can get you to accept a loan that's got, slightly higher fees in it, I get extra kickback on that too, and that's my commission as well. So there's loans that we can book that I could earn potentially $3,000, $4,000 in commissions on that one deal. And we're trying to do as many of those as we could, a month, obviously. So it's gotten tougher though. They have tightened up the guidelines, thank goodness. Some of the things that were really unethical have been, watched. I wasn't in that game, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately, but they used to be able to approve loans. We do stated income loans. You could just tell me what you made, and if you had good credit, we would book that loan, and all right, sounds great. And I would never have to look at your income documentation. Now you don't get by with that anymore. But back when they used to just approve everybody for loans, and they would be able to do, each loan officer was writing 8, 9 loans a month and just signing people up left and right. A lot of people made a lot of money with that. So. But now they've tightened up with that again with the underwriting, income docs. They're going to look at that stuff more thoroughly. But again, at the same point, there is some leeway with there as far as the fees that I can charge and the rates that we could put on you. So again, like I said, it's best to work through like your local bank. You're working with the loan officer that's not commissioned based off that loan that he's getting you. And so he's there because he wants your business beyond that home loan. He wants your car loan. They want to have your checking and savings. When your kids have loans, they want to have you go through them as well. So they're looking out for you beyond that one loan. So that's the situation that I want to be in. So as far as home loans as well, we talked about the FHA loan. Again, that's the most common home loan a first-time home buyer is going to get. The reason being is you're going to get it in a good interest rate, and it allows you to put the least amount of money down. Now, we used to do 100% financing all the time, and by that I mean, you didn't have to bring any cash out of pocket, and we could write your loan and we just set you up on that 30-year payment plan or whatever you wanted there. But now with an FHA loan, you've got to put 3.5% down, plus closing costs. So if I'm buying a $100,000 house, I'm paying $3,500 I have to bring to the table, on top of probably about $1,000 to $1,500 in closing costs. So I've got to have $5,000 roughly to get through the door and get that loan booked now for a $100,000 loan. There are places that will do 100% financing now, but you have to meet certain criteria. A VA loan, for example, will do 100% financing, but you have to have some kind of military affiliation or be retired from the military or had served in the military. They'll do 100% financing, and it's a great deal. And also, which may be more relevant around here, is USDA loans as well. If you're buying a home in an area that's rural enough, you may qualify for a USDA loan, and they do 100% financing. So that's what you'd be looking at with that.
Buy it without having to get it through a bank.
Well, that would be.
Cash. We pay $1,000 a month for 6 years on our house.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're doing ours, because we went to Bank of America, me and my husband.
Mm-hmm.
They initially, screwed us over. But
Sure.
That was his name.
Okay.
But they are this big lawsuit going on.
Sure.
Bank and they also.
What she's referring to too is it's kind of like a contract for deed type deal, where you're not going through a bank to finance the home, or rather you're buying it from the individual that's selling the house. It's really rare when an individual might be willing to do that, because if I'm selling the house, I don't want to deal with payments and all of that. I'd rather just you go through a bank and I get my huge chunk of money potentially because the house is sold and it's out of my hair. But sometimes you can do a deal like that, and like I said, it's normally referred to as a contract for deed. If you do that, what I would be leery of is the contract that you sign, because I've seen it happen many times where somebody was set up in that situation, made payments. Well, then the guy that actually still owned the property that you're buying it from essentially wasn't making the payments, wasn't then turning those payments over to the bank or making them on his end, and the house still gets foreclosed on, and you're saying, what's going on here? You know, why is there an eviction notice on my door? I've been paying every month. So you could run into some real issues with that. So you would want to have a lawyer look at that contract.
They altered it, and they built it and everything.
So,
They just divorced.
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
You were talking about having all your loans taken out from your local bank. Are there any dangers in doing that? Like,
No, not necessarily. I mean, it's worthwhile to I mean, I guess one of the dangers could be that, you know, there's such a strong sense of trust there that, well, you know, because I always do business with them, are they going to take advantage of me now because they know I'm not shopping around? I don't think so, but you can always shop around whenever you're looking to get a home loan. So yeah, check with your local bank, and then you can check with another bank or something like that to get an idea if that sounds in line. It's always good to get a second look at it, yeah.
Could it be dangerous to go through a credit union versus a bank like Bank of America or something? If they don't have the funds to back up or something goes wrong?
No, loans are going to be, they'll be insured one way or another, and even the credit union will probably be selling that loan to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or somebody like that, and somebody else may end up servicing it. Even if you go through a local bank, there's a real high chance that they're still going to transfer that loan over to Bank of America or Chase or somebody like that. You're just being concerned with the fees that you're paying up front and the fact that they're going to be within reason, and you're more likely to get that deal with your local bank, despite the fact they're going to sell it off too. So,
I have a question, but it's about bankruptcy. So after somebody files bankruptcy, what would that make their credit score? Does it start over?
No, it's a good question, and let's talk about bankruptcy for a second. As far as an individual is concerned, there's two bankruptcies that can be filed, either a Chapter 7 bankruptcy or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Basically, it's the case that, you know, maybe my wife lost her job and now we're on my income alone, and we don't have the funds to cover everything that we need to pay. You know, I'm making my house payment and I can pay my utilities based off my income, but we've also got $10,000, $12,000 in credit card debt, and there's just not room to pay it. So we've started to fall behind. We're 3, 4, 5 months behind with that. Eventually that account's going to get charged off, go into collections. Beyond that, they might try to take steps to garnish my wages because I'm not paying my credit cards, and I cannot have 25% of my income taken out of my paycheck right now. So it may be the case that I decide I'm going to look into bankruptcy. Now, the bankruptcies that can be filed, the Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, with the Chapter 7 bankruptcy, the court doesn't put me on any kind of payment plan to pay that debt back. It's wiped away and that is it. That will stay on my credit report for 10 years. Doesn't mean my credit's terrible for 10 years by any means, but it stays on my report for 10 years. So anytime somebody pulls up my credit to give me a loan, they can see that I had that happen. If I go to apply for if I go to apply for a job and they're going to pull my credit, they're going to see that that's happened as well. Let's say it's the case that I file bankruptcy, but I do have some extra money that would allow me to at least pay something back. I would potentially be filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. And when that's the case, the court's going to put me on a payment plan that'll last anywhere from 3 to 5 years, and I'll pay back at least a portion of those debts that I owed. The court's going to look at my budget, my income, my expenses, and they're going to figure out what is reasonable to pay. And I'm not going to get it all paid off in that time probably, but whatever's left will get discharged and forgotten about there. I'm sorry, and to answer your question further on that, it will take a pretty significant hit to your credit up front. But to be honest, if you're in a spot where you're filing bankruptcy, you're probably already behind on several things and your credit's already started to take a pretty significant hit. So yeah, the credit score will drop, but sometimes it actually helps you move forward, because if those things were just going to sit and linger on your report for a long time, sometimes you can be better off to file the bankruptcy and finally help yourself start moving forward with that kind of stuff. So yeah, go ahead.
I learned if you have like bills before you get married, can you just file bankruptcy, or since you're married, do you have to file?
As far as I know, you can file bankruptcy individually even if you're married.
Because I haven't really, obviously.
Yeah, I'm not positive that's the case, but I'm fairly certain that you can. So.
So is it worth doing it just on hospital? That's all I ask.
It depends. Yeah, it can be. But again, you can contact whoever holds those debts and talk to them and let them know, hey, I'm in a spot where, I'm looking at this much as far as medical debts are concerned. There's no way I'm going to get this paid. It's an unreasonable amount. I'm looking at potentially filing a bankruptcy, but if you guys are willing to work something out, I'd love to be able to avoid that and see what they say. They may not come with anything reasonable, but hopefully when you say that, I'm considering filing a bankruptcy, what would be running through their head is the fact that, well, if she files bankruptcy, potentially we aren't going to get anything back, so something's better than nothing. Let's see what will work out. So just give it a shot and see. But yeah, it's not out of the question to file bankruptcy just because of medical bills. That happens all the time. So, yeah.
Can you be denied to file bankruptcy?
Yeah, actually you can. There's people that potentially abuse the system to where, I could go out and spend all day for no reason. It's like, I'm not worried about it because I'm just going to file bankruptcy. But you can absolutely get denied a bankruptcy. So.
Is there a certain number of times you can file for bankruptcy?
There's not a certain number of times that you can file as far as I'm aware, but there is a certain amount of time that has to pass between each bankruptcy. If you file a Chapter 7, the one where you don't pay anything back, that amount of time is longer versus the Chapter 13 where you do pay part of that back. That's a shorter amount of time. So, but yeah, there is restrictions on it. And those laws have gotten a little bit tougher than what they had been in the past. So there's certainly people that abuse it, but bankruptcy is not necessarily the wrong thing to do in certain situations. I mean, it's there for a reason. It can help people that could be in a tough spot. But I had a guy that met with me not too long ago that was going to take steps to file bankruptcy, and his lawyer suggested he come to see us. Hopefully we could help him avoid it. And his reasoning for having to file, I was like, well, what happened that caused you to accumulate this credit card debt? Trying to get an idea of a situation. His answer was, well, I haven't had a raise in probably 3 years. That's not a reason to accumulate credit card debt. That's not a hardship. That's what happens sometimes. You spent beyond your means, and that's what happened. So, you need to take ownership of your situation, obviously. Mm-hmm.
Right, after you, file for the Chapter 7 bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
does it, after that certain amount of time that passes, does it matter if you file for the Chapter 13 one, since that time passed?
You're saying if I file Chapter 7?
File for another bankruptcy,
Uh-huh.
for Chapter 13, is that going to affect because you have the Chapter 7 before?
Yeah, somehow there's still that time restriction between when those can happen, but I'm just not sure how the numbers are exactly. But yeah, so. Obviously you want to do everything you can to avoid a bankruptcy, but sometimes that does happen, certainly. So part of that comes down to the budget as well. Now, the biggest, the toughest appointments that I do are the appointments where I have the husband and the wife come in to see me, and they're in trouble. One of them handles the finances, the other stays completely out of it or is burying their head in the sand and doesn't even know what's going on. And then they find out in my office exactly how much trouble they're in, and it creates a pretty uncomfortable situation. Most of the time, the person that comes to see me is almost always going to be the wife. Because the husband's usually too ashamed to do it and doesn't want to, come do it. So I think I've said this before in a class, kudos to the wives for kind of manning up in the situation and being willing to kind of face some of the stuff head on. But we run into a lot of issues with budgeting when people become married, because it may be the case that just one person handles the finances, the other person does not see it at all, doesn't see the budget, doesn't know exactly where things stand, and so they're on a completely different spending pattern than the other person might be, who's handling the finances and understands. Or sometimes it's the opposite, that one person handles the budget and the finances and the checkbook and all of that, and that person spends out of control, and the other person that's completely not involved in the finances has no idea that it's gotten so out of control. And so the biggest thing is really communicating and looking at things every month, and both of you seeing statements and understanding what spending is and where the budget is. A lot of times what we'll see people set up is a lot of times we'll see people just don't work well together with that kind of stuff, and it gets confusing. So a lot of times what people will do as a pretty nice fix is, what we'll do is we're going to set up 3 different checking accounts. We're going to have a his checking account, we're going to have a her checking account, and we're going to have an our checking account. Whereas when each of us get paid, a certain amount of money is going to go into each one of those groups. I'm going to have a certain amount of money going to my checking account, and that's my fun money that I get to use for whatever, and it's going to cover, what I spend on gas and all of that, my regular expenses. We're going to have my wife's checking account, and she's got the exact same deal as I do, and then we're going to have our checking account. And our checking account covers all of the big things and the utilities and all of that. So all of the household expenses, our car payments, our insurances, our utilities, all of that stuff goes into to our checking account. We know that's money that neither of us can touch. It just goes to those expenses. And sometimes that really helps to prevent, you know, bigger issues from coming up as far as being on different pages with the finances. So it's a good way to do that too. So it's an awkward transition going from being single and handling your own finances to handling the family's finances and working those things out. Tension can certainly come up from that. So you need to figure out a game plan on what's going to work for you guys. So, all right, questions about that? Yeah, go ahead.
Like, how long do you think you should, I don't know, be married or be in a relationship before you open like a joint account with somebody?
Well, it's a tough question because, and you're talking just like a joint checking account where you're putting everything together. I personally, I just like the idea of keeping things separate for the most part. It prevents issues from coming up. You know, especially while we're not married, I want to keep our things separate. We may share some bills as far as rent and all of that stuff, but I'd rather it be the case that, you know, you're getting approved for your own car loan, I'm going to get approved for my own car loan. I don't want to be tied to that because often things can end bad or badly, and it just creates a really tough situation. I don't want somebody to be on the hook for my debt, but more so the case that if this relationship sours for a bad reason and we really hate each other's guts, I don't want to be stuck with something that, you know, she accumulated, and because I was on there with her as well, I'm responsible for, even though I really had nothing to do with it. So, you know, I would encourage you to keep things separate until you're married, but you can certainly share expenses, but I would keep financing separate as much as I could. You can, but when you go through, if you go through a divorce, the debts that you guys incurred together, we're equally responsible for, whether my name's on it or my spouse's name is on for it, as far as I understand going through a divorce and how the law works out. So it would be the case that we've got, my wife and I, we've got $10,000 in credit card debt. She opened up every single account. My name's not on any of those accounts. It's all happened while we were married. But who's to say that I didn't tell her to open those accounts because we needed to get new furniture and I couldn't get it approved with my credit. You know, nobody knows whether that's the case or not. So we're equally going to be responsible for that debt, right or wrong. So when we get divorced, you know, I'm going to have obligation to half of that debt, and even though it's not in my name. And if I don't pay that debt, even though it's my obligation, credit-wise, the credit report doesn't differentiate. It only hurts her credit because it's only in her name. Legally, I'm obligated to pay half of that, so her issue is going to be with me, and it's going to have to go through the courts, and I'm in contempt or whatever it might be. But credit-wise, I'm not paying my half like I'm supposed to. It still just hurts her credit, which seems really unfair, and that's really kind of ugly when it happens, and I see that all the time too. So, but yeah, the debts that you have when you're married, doesn't matter who opened it. So, but again, it may be very different as far as the debts you brought into the marriage. Like I said, those were her debts before I even married her, so how can I be responsible for that? So,
is it true if whenever somebody in your family dies, then you get their debt?
No, you don't get their debt. What will happen is the estate will be left to settle that. But if there's no money left in the estate, you know, my parents didn't have any money. They rented, didn't own a home, but they had $15,000 in credit card debt when they passed away. If there's no money in the estate to essentially settle that debt, it does not get passed on to the kids. I get that question all the time too. Yeah.
I have a question. A friend of mine had an inheritance from their parents,
Mhm.
or from his parents, and he got married to a gal, and this was a long time ago, but then they just recently got a divorce, and she's trying to take him for that too.
Yeah.
Now, can she do that?
Might be able to. It's possible. You know, he probably would have been well advised to have a prenuptial agreement if he knew he had a chunk of money before he got married.
And his dad died and left him the house and all this stuff, and she's trying to take it.
Were they married when that was left to him?
No.
So he should have gotten a prenup when he got that before he got married, would have been my thought.
Okay.
But yeah, I would assume that she could have a right to that potentially, as terrible as that might sound. But I'm not sure. I would lean towards yes, though. She's going to have her hands on it. Yeah. So yeah, I think I don't know that this is kind of what you say in a marriage and family class, but you should always prepare for things not to end the right way.
Next chapter.
So, stresses as far as the finances are concerned are probably a huge reason why marriages don't last. So,
Are you seeing more of that lately?
Yeah.
And how does that look? Because I know in some of our reading and some of what we heard about research, there's some debate, is the divorce rate dropping a little because people can't even afford to get divorced, or, how does that translate?
yeah, I would say I see it a little bit more now than I had been before. Again, it's a situation where, one person in the household has lost their job, the other person's still working. When an extended amount of time goes by with that, it's not going to be uncommon for the person who is working to start to resent that other person who is, somewhat the cause of the financial issues that the family might be having. And so, it's understandable right now that people are being laid off and people aren't working, and it's more common right now than it has been in a long time. But again, to a point, it depends on the patience and the commitment that family member might have and the understanding. But again, it adds a lot of frustrations to the marriage there with the stress of the finances. So it can be a really tough spot. Like I said, those appointments where husband and wife come in, I cringe every single time it happens. I'd rather just be talking to one at first to clear the air, and then be on at least the phone or have the other person come in to make sure we're on the same page. If they're all in good mood and understand both what's going on, I prefer it to be both, but I would say at least half the time it's just not the case. One person's well aware of what's going on, the other one's not. And I hate when they find out in my office. It's awkward, to say the least. So, but yeah, fire away with questions. Go ahead.
Okay, so if a couple was married and then one of the spouse had, happened to them or they passed away or something like that, and they got like a lot of doctor's bills, does those doctor's bills go to the other spouse or it still goes to the
That I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure how that plays out. I'm hoping that because it's just in that one person's name that they're not going to be obligated to that. And that's probably going to be the case. And a lot of times, credit-wise, that's going to be the case too. If, my wife passes away and she did have credit card debt that was just in her name, credit-wise, that company...
like the hospital?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the case that there's not an obligation there with that. And I'm just saying, just like credit card wise, if my wife had credit card debt in just her name and she passed away, because I was married to her, I'm not going to be obligated to pay that debt as far as her concerned. I never signed that contract with her. It's different with a divorce, but with death, it makes more sense, I guess. So I don't know. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Nobody will give me a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any?
Yes.
Do you have any suggestions?
No, that's a good question.
It's not enough.
Yeah, it's a good question because, if I don't have any kind of credit in my name, because I haven't had a credit card before, I haven't had a car loan in my name, I don't have any student loan debt that I'm paying on yet or something like that, I probably have zero credit score reporting, which means I'm not going to get approved for a credit card. The best thing to do is to go to your local bank or credit union, let them know that's the case, and let them know, hey, I want to start building credit. I haven't had anything in my name before. What do you offer? They're probably going to have you sign up for what's called a secured credit card. And basically what that is, they're going to approve you for a credit card that you're going to have to put like $100 into a savings account, and they're going to give you a credit limit of $100. So it's no risk to them at all, but they're going to report it like you're using a credit card each month. After doing that for probably 6 months, you're going to have a credit score that's most likely going to be above 600 and be pretty fair. You'll be able to get approved for a regular credit card with them or with somebody else. It's easier to start from scratch as far as building credit than it is if you've kind of already dug a hole, because then you've got steps you got to take to clean up the old stuff. As far as cleaning up the old stuff too, if I do have collections that are on my report, there's a couple ways I can kind of go about paying on those debts. I need to be in touch with the collection company that's now handling it. And sometimes those get sold from one company to another. So it can be tough to track down, but if you go to that website, annualcreditreport.com, you'll be able to see who's handling that debt now, and it'll have the contact phone number for that creditor. Call them up, and you can try to work out a payment plan with them. I mean, if you got the money to pay off in full, that's great. What you can also do is that credit card or that collection company is probably going to be willing to settle that debt for like half of what you owe. What happens is, if I didn't pay my Discover for like 4 or 5, 6 months, eventually they're going to stop handling that account and they're going to charge off that debt, which essentially means that they're going to write it off as a loss on their books that they didn't get paid on that debt. And then they sold it to a third-party collection company who buys it for, you know, pennies on the dollar. So I might have had $10,000 in my Discover card. Discover got tired of dealing with it, wrote it off as a loss, sold it to a third-party collection company for $500 maybe. Now that collection company's got the right to collect on all $10,000 of that, and they're going to be aggressive. They're going to drill me with phone calls and collection notices, but they're probably going to offer me settlement offers as well, because even if I pay half of it, they just still made a huge chunk of money on that. If you come to an arrangement like that with a creditor or even a collection company, have them send you that agreement in writing before you send them that money. If it's with a collection company, you're dealing with somebody that gets paid a commission based on you paying right there on the spot over the phone. So sometimes I could say anything that I want. Now legally I've got limitations, but they often cross those. I'm going to say whatever I can to get you to pay right there on that spot, because I get paid when I get you to pay. So I may say that I cut you a deal, and if you can send me $4,000 because you can borrow it from your grandma, and you send me that money, you know, you wouldn't be surprised if 3 months later you check your credit report and it still says that you owe, you know, $6,000 or $7,000. And you're like, wait a second, we had a deal. You call them up. I don't see any notes on the deal. You know, where's the deal at? So get it in writing before you make that settlement arrangement. It's better credit-wise if you can pay the debt off in full. Like I said, if I owe $10,000 and they're going to settle it with me for $1,500 or $2,000 and get it off my credit, I'll probably take the slower credit build up if I just save myself $8,000. So it can be a good deal.
Can you consolidate? Like, have a credit card with, like, the hospital?
Probably not, because your credit's not going to be in great shape. We do offer what's called a debt management program through our company, whereas we're not giving you a loan, but we can set it up to where you make one payment to us each month. We then disperse those funds to each creditor, and because, like I said, you're going through us, they reduce the interest rates and payments for you. Usually account that's in collections, though, they're not charging the interest. Usually that's over with. And so collection accounts don't always agree to terms with us or payment arrangements. You can do the same kind of thing yourself.
From like 2007.
But, yeah. Well, what happens as well, keep this in mind, there's what's called a statute of limitations on a debt. In most states, it's 7 years. And so from the last time that I made a payment on a debt, that creditor's got 7 years to take a legal action against me, or else they have to forget about it. So, I mean, you may get lucky and hope that 7 years passes, but
They don't get stuff no more.
yeah. Yeah, and so like I said, after 7 years, it can fall off your credit report and be done with, and you're no longer obligated to that debt. They could still call you and try to get you to pay it, but legally you're not obligated to. And if you did pay it, that would start that 7-year window over again. So if that comes up and it still shows in your credit, I would maybe talk to a lawyer just to double check that and see what can be done to get that off your credit, because it shouldn't be affecting you anymore at that point.
Oh, okay.
So,
Thank you.
you bet.
Can you dug yourself like out of the hole that you like got into?
Uh-huh.
Is it hard to really put it back up?
The harder part's paying off the other stuff. Once you've done that, you're kind of to the easy part. Now again, it depends on how far your credit score dropped, how long it's going to take to build up. But if you've paid off all your collections and now you're taking steps where you've got, you know, ideally 2, maybe 3 credit cards in your name that you're using each month and paying on each month and just carrying very small balances on, you know, you can certainly build that score up within a year and a half, I would think, at the worst, to something in the 600s and be really kind of on your way pretty well. So,
So if you're like trying to like build credit like for a loan or whatever, you have like one of those secured credit cards and you put like $100 on it and you like don't spend like any money on it. Like, is it possible to have a perfect like credit score?
No,
Or
you're not going to have. I mean,
just
you.
a really high one?
Yeah, it's well. I mean, what's really going to be an ideal situation is that, you know, I've got a car loan in my name, I've got a home loan in my name, and I've got 2 or 3 credit cards in my name that I carry very small balances on that have very high limits on them. That's going to be the best situation to really have a great credit score, because I've got diversity in my credit, I've got secured loans, I've got unsecured loans, and the credit I have, I'm not maxing out at all. So I've got credit available to me, I use it just a little. That's the ideal situation for building credit. Yeah. And even if you do all that stuff and you do that right for 30 straight years, you're not going to have an 850 score, but you can have a very good score. So,
So you said having home loans and car loans, so what about student loans? How do they look at those?
yeah, that's good for your credit too. If you're, I mean, it's just any loan that you've got out there that you're paying on monthly in the way that you're supposed to, it's good for your score. And again, it's kind of diversifies the credit, and it's good for the score that you've got an obligation. You're holding your end of the deal up there. So yeah.
It doesn't look like you're turning around your money too much. Have all those looking like that.
If you've got a lot of different ones, a lot of different things on your credit, you know, 8, 10 accounts, something like that, it can start to look bad because perhaps you've got too many obligations out there. But like I said, if I've got a car loan, a student loan, a home loan, a couple of credit cards, that's a pretty good looking credit report, to be honest. I mean, it's funny the way it works because, you know, somebody that's in the most responsible position financially doesn't carry any debt. It would be awesome if I didn't have a home loan or a car loan. I just pay cash for everything because I'm just so rich. But credit score wise, I'm not going to have the best credit score if I don't rely on credit ever, which sounds a little backwards sometimes, but.
My aunt, like around Christmas, she'll go to the stores and she'll buy stuff. You know, they always say, oh, if you sign up with our credit card, blah, 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 you get so much off your stuff. Well, she does that. And she'll spend thousands of dollars that
Yeah.
day, but then she pays it off when she gets the bill and she cuts the credit card up. Is
Yep.
that actually helping her?
It's not helping your credit. Opening and closing accounts is not good for your credit score. And so, you know, I'm not saying it's a bad deal to take advantage of something like that.
She doesn't close them, actually. She just cuts it up so she can't ever use it again.
If you have too many accounts open, though, it can start to hurt your credit as well. But it's really kind of a gray area, and it's a fine line there. It's probably not really hurting her, but if she's got, you know, 8 or 10 different store accounts, that's
She
when,
does it like every year, so it probably is hurting her.
yeah, it's probably,
And it takes forever to get through a line when you're with her.
yeah, it's probably hurting her.
It's like, really?
And the thing about the store accounts, you know, it's not that store accounts it's a bad idea to have them. I mean, if I tried to take my wife's Kohl's card away, she'd probably cut my hand off. But she uses it all the time, and she gets discounts because of it. But if she was carrying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on it at the 21% that they're definitely going to be at, that would be an issue. So you just don't want to be carrying balances. You use it to get the deal, and you pay it off at the end of the month. So, but don't do it with places you don't go to essentially all the time. You know, it's not worth it. Mm-hmm.
But what if you have like a doctor's bill or something on your credit, and like you guys did those collections or that, do they charge like interest on it? Let's say like $50. Can you pay the 50 or whatever whenever you want to, or is like more than that?
Usually they're not going to be charging you interest on an account that's in collections. I mean, potentially they could be, but usually they're not. You can call them up and arrange payments and send payment to them, and they're going to cash your checks and take it. But I'd rather just be in touch with them, and we know exactly what the plan is. We know exactly what I need to send every month and exactly when it's going to be paid off if I do it that way. Just so I can see it. It's almost like being on a diet. You need to check the results, and it inspires you to do better. I want to track exactly what's going on with that so I can see myself moving forward, and it motivates me to try to save extra money whenever I can to accelerate that. That's kind of the way to do it, yeah.